This lesson begins a study of Nehemiah. Nehemiah is a book written by Ezra, and because of various verses that are significantly like his writing, he is considered also the author of Chronicles and of Esther. Now, this Ezra and Nehemiah are considered all one book because as we roll through, we will see the beginning and ending of setters, which were an amount of scripture that could be read at one sitting. Some critics maintain that Nehemiah was first, the wall was built first, and then the temple. However, various verses would contradict that, and it would seem likely that Ezra and Nehemiah, who relied heavily on the Lord, would have instituted the worship of God with the rebuilding of the temple first, and then the wall around the city. Nehemiah is from the tribe of Judah. It is thought maybe a likely descendant of David. While Ezra, in the book of Ezra, very carefully traces his ancestry back to Phinehas, which is not only Levitical but the high priest line. And Nehemiah's name means consolation of Yah. And the point of Nehemiah is to very carefully look at how he puts all his trust in God and how well organized he is and how he deals with potential enemies. Nehemiah chapter 1 and verse 1, and it reads, "The words of Nehemiah, the son of Hachaliah, and it came to pass in the month Chislev, in the 20th year, as I was in Shushan, the palace." And Shushan would have been the place, a very beautiful, interesting place, and it would have been a resort home for the king of Persia. And as we learned in Ezra, the king of Persia, we know of two, and then the name Artaxerxes is used, and that is what we call an appellative, and it means great king, and it is exactly as the word Pharaoh is used in naming the kings of Egypt. Any one of them could be Pharaoh or Artaxerxes, as in the case in Persia. And we're going to see that he is taking the second, Ezra has come to take the second move of persons out of Persia and into the promised land. And Jerusalem is the object of this book, and Jerusalem is God's favorite place. In Ezekiel 16, we learn that he spread his skirt over this city, and that is a Hebrewism for marriage. And in Yahweh Shammah, Jerusalem, it means the Lord is here. Now, that first verse we read, that Chislev, That is the 9th month, and that would have been the last of November and the 1st of December. And it mentions Shushan, and that is the capital of Elam, and it had been held by Babylon. And Daniel, in fact, was taken there, and then it was conquered by Cyrus, and the city was called Susha in earlier times. 2nd verse, and it reads, Then Hanani, one of my brethren, came, he and certain men of Judah, and I asked them concerning the Jews that had escaped, which were left of the captivity, and concerning Jerusalem. And this is one of the reasons we know that Ezra had come back. And this verse would tell us that Ezra has come back, and this is how Nehemiah will know the state of the Judea and Jerusalem in particular. 3, and they said unto me, the remnant that are left of the captivity there in the province are in great affliction and reproach. The wall of Jerusalem also is broken down, and the gates thereof are burned with fire. That would have been Nebuchadnezzar's work. So it is in a pitiful shape. The gates have been burned and the walls knocked down. Now, at this point, Judah is a province of Persia. 4, and it came to pass when I heard these words that I sat down and wept and mourned certain days and fasted and prayed before the God of heaven. Notice that he is not displaying anger. He is displaying sadness and mourning, and he has taken this to the Lord. 5 will begin his prayer. And said, I beseech thee, O Lord, God of heaven, the great and terrible God, that keepeth covenant and mercy for them that love him and observe his commandments. Terrible, let's translate that to be awesome. And there's a condition. The condition is to those who keep the covenant and the commandments and love him. Those are the same conditions that exist today. 6. Let thine ear now be attentive, and thine eyes open, and thou mayest hear the prayer of thy servant, which I pray before thee now day and night for the children of Israel, thy servants, and confess the sins of the children of Israel, which we have sinned against thee. Both I and my father's house have sinned. Notice this prayer. It is day and night. He's in constant prayer. He is repentant not only for himself, but for everyone. Notice also that he is not asking, well, why did this happen to us? Why did you let that happen? God. He knows full well why. It is in verse 7. We have dealt very corruptly against thee, and have not kept the commandments, nor the statutes, nor the judgments, which thou commanded thy servant Moses. Those ordinances, of course, would be, the shedding of blood. And, of course, those statutes and ordinances are gone today. But, of course, the law stands. Verse 8, remember, I beseech thee, the word that thou commandest thy servant Moses, saying, If you trespass, I will scatter you abroad among the nations. So he realizes that the captivity, both of the northern tribe and of Judah, Benjamin, and those Levites in the southern part of the country, are for sin. 8. Remember, I beseech thee, verse 9. But if ye turn unto me and keep my commandments and do them, though there were of you cast out of the uttermost part of heaven, yet will I gather them from thence and will bring them unto the place I have chosen to put my name there, set my name there. And that is, of course, in the promised land. So no matter how bad, he's saying, if you turn, and Jerusalem is that wonderful place. 10. Now these are thy servants and thy people whom thou hast redeemed by thy great power and by thy strong hand. He knows that it is God who has delivered them. 11. O Lord, I beseech thee, let now thine ear be attentive to the prayer of thy servant, and to the prayer of thy servants who desire to fear thy name and prosper. I pray thee, thy servant this day, and grant him mercy in the sight of men, for I was the king's cup bearer. This concludes that chapter 1, and it concludes this prayer. Fear, translate that to be revere. And he was the cupbearer to Artaxerxes, the king of Persia. Now that would have been a person who was very trustworthy, and it would have been a position of high honor. And the duty of the cupbearer would have been to act rather like a court jester, to be entertaining, and also to taste anything that the king might drink or eat, because a very successful way to kill a king would have been to poison him. 2. And it came to pass in the month Nisan, in the 20th year of Artaxerxes the king, that wine was before him, and I took up the wine and gave it to the king. Now I had not been before time sad in his presence. So he has a sad face. That first month, there's something wrong here about the time. The 8th month, this king died, and then in the 9th month, this Hebrew first year, the timing is off, because when a king died, if it was in the 8th month, then it was considered an entire year. And that is why time is difficult to understand in the Old Testament. And E.W. Bullinger did a 110-year correction, and that way we can, using his scholarship, know exact times. 2. Wherefore the king said unto me, Why is thy countenance sad, seeing thou art not sick? This is nothing else but sorrow of heart. Then I was very sore afraid. Well, yes, he's afraid, because he's supposed to be happy And the king is questioning, well, why do you have that sad face today? 3, and said unto the king, let the king live forever. Why should not my countenance be sad, when the city, the place of my father's sepulchres, lieth waste, and the gates thereof are consumed with fire? So he's saying, I'm sad for Jerusalem and for the graves of my ancestors. Verse 4, then the king said unto me, for what dost thou make request? So I prayed to the God of heaven. Said a silent prayer here, standing before the king. Oh, let me say the right thing, and let the king's heart be touched. I'm sure he prayed something like that. 5, and I said unto the king, if it so please the king, and if thy servant have found favor in thy sight, that thou wouldest send me unto Judah, unto the city of my father's sepulchres, that I may build it. So this is a very bold request for someone who is under captivity and who is in a very honored position to be a cupbearer. 6, and the king said unto me, the queen also sitting by him, for how long shall thy journey be, and when wilt thou return? So it pleased the king to send me, and I set him a time. Now there are those who think that the queen here is none other than Esther herself. 7, moreover, I said unto the king, if it please the king, let letters be given me, that the governors beyond the river, that they may convey me over till I come unto Judah. Now, the river, this would have been on the west side of the Euphrates, and a letter, a decree from the king to those in power. And at this time, the king of Persia would have been the most powerful man in the universe, and no one would have given Nehemiah any problems. 8, and a letter unto Asaph, the keeper of the king's forest, that he may give me timber, to make beams for the gates of the palace, which appertained to the house, and for the wall of the city, and for the house that I shall enter into. And the king granted me according to the good hand of my God upon me. Now, is he giving the king of Persia the credit? No, indeed. He is giving this to God. He asked for this timber for the house to the wall, and that would include the citadel in the lower part of the city. Of course, the wall itself would be made of stone. And later, Nehemiah will be made governor of Judah, and the word for governor in the Persian language is Pekah. 9, then I came to the governor beyond the river, and gave them the king's letters. Now the king had sent captains of the army and horsemen with me. He must have very much liked Nehemiah, as he sent armed guards along with him, along with these letters. 10, when Sanballat the Harabite and Tobiah the servant, the Ammonite, heard of it, it grieved them exceedingly that there was come a man to seek the welfare of the children of Israel. Yes, these are enemies of the people of Israel. Sanballat would be a Moabite. A Moabite would be a descendant of Lot from an incestuous relationship with his daughter. So would Ammonites, descendants of Ammon, also of Lot and one of his daughters. And they are aggrieved. They live in what has come to be called Samaria. Samaria, in earlier times, was the capital city of the kingdom to the north. But after the captivity, those few folks who remained in the northern tribes, they were taken 200 years before Judah, so 270 years earlier. And they were there, very few, and then these other persons who the kingdom of Samaria became heard of. And these are enemies. Ammonites and Moabites or worship pagans. Moabites worship Molech, for example, and that entertained child sacrifice. 11. So I came to Jerusalem and was there 3 days. So he took a little rest to collect himself. 12. And I arose in the night under cover, and I and some few men with me, neither told I any man what God had put in my heart to do at Jerusalem. Neither was there any beast with me save the beast that I rode upon. So he's riding out to take a survey. To back up about Sanballat and Tobiah, the documents in history uncovered in 1909, a papyrus or a scroll, and this Sanballat was a governor of Samaria. So history does undergird that fact. 13. And I went out by night by the gate of the valley, even before the dragon wall, and to the dung port, and viewed the walls of Jerusalem, which were broken down, and the gates thereof were consumed with fire. And yes, they were. That valley gate is called Gehenna, the same word for hell in the New Testament, and it's where they hauled things to dispose of them, and it was always burning. This is the only place in the Bible that this dragon wall is mentioned, and it's the well here is considered to be the well of Gihon. And the gates, of course, were burned and the walls knocked down under Nebuchadnezzar. 14. Then I went on to the gate of the fountain and to the king's pool, and there was no place for the beast that was under me to pass. There's so much debris and stones and broken up mess that he couldn't even ride this donkey or whatever through that. 15. Then I went up in the night by the brook, that had to be the brook of Kidron, and viewed the wall, and turned back and entered by the gate of the valley and returned. So he went up and looked around and then went back the same way that he came out. 16. And the rulers knew not whither I went or what I did, neither had I as yet told it to the Jews, nor to the priests, nor to the nobles, nor to the rulers, nor to the rest that did the work. So he is being quiet until he assesses the matter and makes a plan. And by keeping quiet, he will be able to keep down possible insurrection and problems. 17. Then I said unto them, Ye see the distress that we are in, how Jerusalem lieth waste, and the gates thereof are burned with fire. Come, let us build the wall at Jerusalem, that we be not more a reproach. And a reproach laughed at, ridiculed, and it was a beautiful place and a magnificent place in the time of David and Solomon, of course. 18. Then I told them of the hand of my God, which was good upon me, as also the king's words that he had spoken unto me. And they said, Let us rise up and build. So they strengthened their hands for this good work. But, verse 19, when Sanballat the Horonite, and Tobiah the servant, the Ammonite, and Geshem the Arabian heard it, they laughed us to scorn and despised us, and said, What is this thing that ye do? Will you rebel against the king? So you're going to sit up here and have yourself a little rebellion, and you remember a province of Persia, Artaxerxes the king. 20, to conclude this chapter. Then answered I them and said unto them, The God of heaven, he will prosper us. Therefore we his servants will arise and build, but ye have no notion, nor right, nor memorial in Jerusalem. Notice that he has said that the hand of God was upon him. The first reason he's to build, and then he mentions the king. He did not be a braggadocio and say, I was an important person in Persia, and the king allowed me to come here for 12 years. He didn't say that at all. And then he has said the God of heaven will prosper us. Chapter 3 lays down his orderly rebuilding of the wall. It is a long repetition of names, but it is a very good record of who worked and where they worked. And you will see, I'm not going to read all of these. I invite you to. But as this was recorded, everyone would have known exactly what group worked on what part of the wall. And I will go through a few verses because there are some who worked and some who didn't. And this was hard work, and they had no interference during this particular part of the building. Verse 1, Then Elisha the high priest rose up with the brethren the priests, and they builded the sheep gate. They sanctified it and set up the doors of it, even unto the tower of Meah. They sanctified it unto the tower of Hananiah. Why, here we have even the high priest and the priests working. And of course, the sheep gate will be where sheep come in. And number 2, it is important to see here that the men of Jericho and Zakur, the son of Imri, built. Now they're working near their home, so this would make sense. They aren't traveling to work, they're working on the wall that's near their home. And another important reason, if you were building a fence around your house, you would make sure that it was tight and well done. Look at verse 5. And next to them, the Tekoites repaired, but their nobles would not put their necks to the work of the Lord. So the nobles here considered themselves too good to work. Skip on now to verse 13, and we will see another group working. Verse 13, then the valley gate repaired Hanun and the inhabitants of Zanoah. They built it and set up the doors therein, the locks thereof, the bars thereof, and 1,000 cubits as the wall unto the dung gate. Excuse me. The dung gate, of course, would have been where any manure or unclean thing would have been hauled out that gate. And it goes on to tell all the way around the city and how they were building. If you skip to verse 22, and after him repaired the priests, the men of the plain. So all the priests are working, and that plain would have been out in the Jordan Valley. And there would have been, that was the first place that the priest stopped, and they were dwelling outside of Jerusalem. And of course, the priest's job is to teach, but here they are building. Now, interestingly, look at verse 26. Moreover, the Nethinim dwelt in Ophi, unto the place over against the water gate toward the east, and the tower that lieth out. Now, the Nethinim, if you have not been with me earlier, Nethinim, or that is given ones. Nethinim is not a nation, not a particular people. The first Nethinim were Gibeonites who walked a very few miles way back in time, and they pretended they made their clothes. They wore old clothes and scuffed up their shoes, and they said, "Oh, we've come a long way, and we just would love to live with you. If you would take us in, we'd be workers." Interestingly, did they ask God? No. They thought that was a wonderful idea, so they made a covenant with them, a covenant that included God, sacred covenant. And they went to work chopping wood and hauling water. And back in Chronicles, we learned that they had stepped up and were acting as scribes. Soon, especially when they returned from captivity, they had, priests were lazy. Some of the priests didn't even go home. And Nethinim were acting as priests. Also, during the time of Solomon, more Nethinim were put to work as he made captives and put persons to labor. Nethinims in this particular instance are right up close to the treasury. Where would they rather be? And of course, the priesthood during the time of Jesus was highly corrupt. And if we look at verse 27, after them had the Tekoites Tekoites repaired another place over against the great tower that lieth out even unto the wall of Ophi. And of course, gold was there, and they would have been maybe a little bit ashamed because nobles did not work. And we learn in one of the verses, if you read through, that daughters were even working. They even had women out here who were doing this hard work, lifting stones and building gates. And verse 32 ends this. But 31, you see the Nethinims are there again, and they're over close to the goldsmiths and the merchants, where the gold and the goods are. 32 completes this chapter 3, and between the going up of the corner unto the sheep gate repaired the goldsmiths and the merchants. And 32 is right smack dab in the middle of this book of Nehemiah, and that tells us that the book of Ezra and the book of Nehemiah are in actuality one book, and very close. It's split right there in the middle. So this concludes this lesson. It will pick up the next time with verses continuing the building, and we were going to see that there's outside uproar, sandblat, and etc. And then, of course, whenever you have a project going, you always have problems from the inside. This video has been an outreach of the Essex Methodist Church in Essex, Missouri, and the Crossroads Global Methodist Church in Dexter, Missouri.